The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Professor Max Tegmark, the cosmologist, physicist, and artificial intelligence expert. You have spent the last 20 years as a professor in the Department of Physics at MIT and have published more than 200 technical papers. In 2017, you wrote the best-selling book, Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Here, you explored how the rise of AI has the potential to transform our future more than any other technology in history. You're also the co-founder and president of the Future of Life Institute, a nonprofit organization with the goal of reducing global catastrophic and existential risks facing humanity. Just recently, the Institute drafted a letter calling on major AI developers to agree to a 6-month pause of any systems more powerful than GPT-4. You believe that AI development is moving faster than anticipated, and we need a serious public debate regarding AI's potential impact on humanity. Max, welcome to London Real.
Thank you.
Great to have you on here. I'm going to jump into it. I think you have said that when it comes to AI, we're not in an arms race. It's actually a suicide race. And I was wondering if you could tell me the state of AI right now, where you think we're headed, and why everyone needs to pay attention to this now.
Yeah, great question. So let's unpack it a little bit by bit there. You know, we have had this planet for 30, we've been in this universe. Actually, we haven't, but you're going to edit this down, right? So I can...
At some point, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. After 13.8 billion years of cosmic history and hundreds of thousands of years of human history, we're approaching this fork in the road, the most interesting juncture, really, of all, I would say, where we're either going to become empowered as a species to really be the masters of our own destiny and use artificial intelligence to solve all the problems we've been stumped by so far, help life flourish like never before, not just on Earth, but probably also out there in our vast cosmos. Or we're going to go extinct or get replaced by entities that don't really care about us and losing basically everything we've got. So this has made me incredibly motivated to think about this. About 7 years ago, I shifted my MIT research group over to doing AI research. Super fun. And it's also made me really motivated to help catalyze this conversation about where are we going to go in this fork. I think it's a really inspiring topic to talk about. It's not a depressing topic like nuclear weapons or something where either they get used, which really sucks, or we don't use them and it's kind of neutral. This is one where it's either going to go terribly bad or it's going to be incredibly inspiring, right? Better than our ancestors ever dreamt of. So really, really motivating. And I think what the risk is that we're just so eager to get all the upside that we rush a little too much and cut a few too many corners on safety, and because of that we lose it all and lose control over this whole business, because it's it is possible, I believe, for us to build machines that are way smarter than us and still either control them or make sure that they help us. You know, after all, you and I have both lived in the presence of smarter beings ourselves when we were little kids. They were mommy and daddy, right? and that worked out quite well because their interests were aligned with ours. But it's not guaranteed by default, right? The woolly mammoths on Earth had to check out living with more intelligent beings, namely us. And have you ever seen any around?
No.
Didn't pan out so great for them. So let's put ourselves in the situation where if we build AI, we figured out actually how to keep it doing what we want or align with our goals, not make ourselves the woolly mammoths. And the problem we're having is that the research on that stuff, which I think will succeed if it's given enough time, is still lagging behind, the research aiming just to make it more powerful and earning us more money. That's why we called for the pause, in short, to make sure that we have enough time to actually get it right, get all the upside, not squander it.
Recently, I'm sure you've been watching the interviews of Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, who was at Google, and now he's left Google, I think, so he can speak freely or do more to maybe talk about the dangers of AI. But he came out and said it was too late for a letter like that. What is your response? And was the letter effective? I mean, we're still talking about it. So as a PR event, I got to take my hat off to you because that's what you want with something like that. So was the letter effective? Was it ever meant to get a pause, or was it really meant to get more attention on this topic?
My personal goal with the letter was actually to mainstream the conversation on whether we should pause or not, so that people felt comfortable having it. Because to be quite candid, many people I really respect in the field felt uncomfortable even suggesting it. It was almost like it was a taboo to suggest it because people might think you're some sort of weirdo, Luddite scaremonger who doesn't understand AI, right? And having people like Joshua Bengio, who shared the Turing Award with Hinton, right, for pioneering deep learning, signing it as signatory number one, saying, we should pause. What it really did, I felt, was make everybody else feel comfortable joining the conversation, whatever side they were on, which is why we've had so much conversation, since the letter. That's, to me, step one. The next step is to see, okay, where is that all going to go? But I think the reason we haven't seen a pause already, and the reason there is a lot of, in my opinion, corner cutting on safety, is not because the people leading the companies building them are somehow not concerned. In fact, I've, even in the last month, I've spoken with Sam Altman and Greg Brockman, who lead OpenAI. I've spoken with Demis Hassabis from DeepMind. I've spoken with Dario Amodei from Anthropic, and so on, and Connor Leahy from Conjecture. All of these people are quite idealistic. They really want to use AI to make the world better, and they're all very mindful of the risks. I really tip my hat to Sam Altman for having the courage to acknowledge this very publicly. He said even quite recently that the worst case scenario is lights out for all of us, and all of these people have been conveying, this could certainly cause human extinction, just like the woolly mammoth went extinct when it had to deal with more intelligent, unaligned entities, right? The reason why we're still not paused, I think, is not because these are not good people, and it's not because they're stupid and don't understand the risks. It's because of what you referred to in the beginning, they're Moloch, the demon that keeps pitting everybody against each other. It's, if one company tries to pause alone, the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to get outcompeted by other companies. And probably even before that happens, the CEO who ordered the pause gets fired, right? This is not a new thing. Moloch, this division demon, you might call him, is someone we know well throughout human history. If you have overfishing, for example, so Canadian fishers collectively managed to make it so that there was suddenly 10 times less cod to fish. Why was that? Was it because the fishers were evil? No, of course not. But they all knew that if they didn't fish, everybody else was still going to keep fishing. and they had to take care of their family. Economists call that one the tragedy of the commons, and economists and others have written books and books and papers studying this at great length, how sometimes you can put people in a situation that brings out the best in them. You can also put people in situations that bring out the worst in them. You put people into the Hunger Games reality or whatever, Moloch in action. And in other words, all of these leaders of these companies, they need help to change their incentive structure so everyone can pause together. That's ultimately what the letter is about. So if the public opinion, if governments come in and say, hey, you folks need to become less like the Wild West and more like biotech, now everything changes to the better. Think about it. In biotech, right? Suppose a company says, we have this fantastic new vaccine. We're just going to start selling it in supermarkets before doing any safety testing. What do you think would happen? What do you think the government would have to say about that?
Yeah, they'd shut them down.
Yeah. And then if the company comes back and says, you government folks, this is so ridiculous. You government folks, you need to tell us how to make it safe. You need to tell us exactly what the government would be like, guys, go away. This is your responsibility to do the safety testing, to do the clinical trials, and present the FDA here in the US with evidence that it's safe. And if you can't do that, well, go back and work harder, This is how we should obviously have it also in all other fields, including AI, where if you're putting out a system which has potential to create harm, then it should be the responsibility of the companies to demonstrate that it's safe. That would end this race to the bottom. This is the way we combat Moloch. This is the way companies now are really incentivized to all work on AI safety enough that they can demonstrate the safety, which again is doable. It just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, your concept of Moloch is fascinating. And I mean, to quickly define it for people that don't know, and I'd love to go a little deeper on it, you might say that Moloch is a metaphorical term for irrational collective behavior. And I think you've said the evil thing about this monster is, even though everyone sees it and understands it, they still can't get out of the race, which is ultimately to the bottom, and potentially everybody's demise or the demise of resources. And this has happened throughout history. And this is something, I'd say it's pretty much your signature IP. And it happens in only certain situations.
I want to be clear. This is Moloch is not my idea. This Moloch is, first, the demon has been with us since the beginning of history, and there's been many wonderful things written about it. Scott Alexander wrote a fantastic piece on his blog Slate Star Codex called Meditations on Moloch. I would highly recommend. In religions around the world, the devil goes by many different names, and Moloch goes by many different names also. What I'm doing is just pointing out here that the real villain in this, the villains here are not the CEOs of the tech companies, it's not AI researchers, it's Moloch himself. That's who we're up against here. So, and as you said, I think your definition was really, really good. Everybody can see that we're being pitted against each other. Yet it's still rational for every one person to keep fighting against the other people in the race, because it's set up that way. The only way we can all get out of the race is by collaborating with each other instead. And it's so that this doesn't sound too depressing. I think it might be worth just taking a minute to remind ourselves how we've successfully defeated Moloch in many other battles throughout history. Evolution, first of all, has built in a lot of collaboration mechanisms, not just in us, but in other animals too. Generally, animals that could kill each other because they have, like cats, for example, or lions, they have evolutionary instincts that inhibit them from fighting unnecessarily. We're the same. If two dudes get into a drunken bar fight, and start having at it, there's still this deep inhibition towards actually killing the other person. Because it turned out that the groups in evolutionary history that didn't have that inhibition got out-competed with other groups that could get along better, right? Just gonna have a sip of water. And then early humans took this to another level. We invented gossip. which is also a great way to collaborate, because now all the moochers and cheaters and liars start to get a personal incentive actually to be more collaborative, because if they aren't, they start getting basically socially punished by others. And then when societies got even better and people started having to when societies grew and we ran into a lot of strangers we'd never met before, so that the gossip thing and the reputation thing didn't work, we invented a legal system to again defeat Moloch. So even if two strangers are dealing with each other, they know that if they kill each other or violate the contract or whatever that they sign, that's a bad idea just for them egoistically. So what it always does, this collaboration anti-Moloch strategies, it makes your personal incentives aligned with a greater good, right? So that's what we need to do here also. We need to make sure that the incentives with AI are aligned with a greater good. There's a lot of nerd research. We're doing some here at MIT where at the moment on how you can make machines have incentives, how you can make AI have incentives aligned with the owner's incentives. You also obviously have to make sure that the corporations that own the AIs have incentives that are aligned. That's where we're failing right now, because they have an incentive to make money. If it were biotech, there would be all these regulations they have to meet, or actually, for that matter, almost any other industry. You know, if you're a car company, you have a lot of safety regulations. If you can't build a nuclear reactor on Trafalgar Square without first demonstrating to the British government, you know, that it's safe. It's actually AI that's the weird exception where there's no meaningful regulations at all. And that's just because it's the new kid on the block, right? And policymakers haven't had time to catch up.
Right. You know, we've been following the blockchain industry for the last couple of years, and the common thing I've heard from AI people is that the government can't figure out how to regulate blockchain, and it's much, much simpler than AI. So does it have any chance of regulating AI as it continues to develop exponentially?
I think it does, because what the government can, I mean, obviously we can't expect all our politicians to have PhDs in computer science, but they certainly can work with technical people from the field who are very eager to help. And in fact, just yesterday, the European Parliament, if I'm correctly informed, voted yes for the EU AI Act that's been developed, which is the first really meaningful regulation in the West on AI. That's a huge step forward. And we just need to get a little more time for politicians and policymakers to catch up. This is another point of the pause, because if we just let the technology get driven by market forces to go as fast as possible, policymaking will never catch up. But if we can pause for 6 months and use those 6 months with people from industry, from academia, from policymaking, getting together and just establishing, like, here are the safety standards. You have like an FDA, but not for drugs, but for AI. These are the safety standards. Now you can kick the ball back to the market and say, okay, everything you release has to be above this bar. If it's just some kid making a funny little computer game, you know, there's no safety risk, so no change. But if it's about somebody releasing a system, an AI system that's going to control nuclear reactors, or just anything that has the potential for major harm, they are now forced to do their safety homework first and make a convincing case to the regulators that this is safe.
But that doesn't stop the covert development of that, either behind the scenes in a corporation or in a government or a intelligence agency or just a bunch of guys in a lab. And they could make advances that maybe you couldn't compare to like developing a drug, because those things could also do harm in the future. So what do you do about that? Or is that an issue?
Yeah. If this sounds depressing, let me see if I can inject some optimism here. You know, let's take something like crystal meth or synthetic opioids, fentanyl. These are actually pretty easy to manufacture. In fact, there are so many crystal meth labs in people's basements and here in the US that there's even TV series about it, like Breaking Bad, right? And because there's a law saying nobody is allowed to sell drugs that haven't been approved as safe. That means that it's also illegal for me to do it in my basement, kind of by default. It's not like the government has to make a special rule against Max making crystal meth in his basement. It's illegal, and because people know that, because there's a lot of stigma around it, that already makes a big difference. Of course, you're not going to stop everybody from trying to make crystal meth. We have a lot of police efforts and other things to try to crack down on it. And what it immediately does, though, is it stops people doing it openly like that, like it is now. Right now, someone can go and do fundraising for a huge company and raise $1 billion to do something equivalent, in my opinion, of in danger or worse than building a $1 billion fentanyl factory. And that's not going to happen at all anymore as soon as it's by default illegal, and you have to do the safety thing first. So I think if we can just start thinking of AI as not some sort of exception that gets exempt from all rules, but it has to behave like any other industry, like biotech, for example. Huge win across the board. It's going to take a while to crack down on very dangerous illicit bootleg stuff, right? Just like with crystal meth or other things. But at the end of the day, we're in a good position. You also mentioned another really great issue. What about governments doing things in secret? So let's look at biological weapons. There was a huge arms race in biological weapons in the 1960s between mainly the US and the Soviet Union. Then biologists got activated, kind of like AI researchers are now, warning about this and saying, hey, we don't want there to be a weapon of mass destruction that's so cheap that all our adversaries can afford it. And Matthew Messelson here at Harvard convinced Richard Nixon of this, and he convinced Brezhnev, and there was the international bioweapons ban. It's great. Now, after that, it's known that both the Soviet Union and the US cheated on the ban to various degrees. Did that make it a failure? Well, let's do an experiment. Can you, off the top of your head, think of any bioweapon attacks that have actually that you've read about in the newspaper, or anyone getting killed by bioweapons since for the last 50 years?
No, I'm sure there's a couple small incidents, but no, nothing major.
It's pretty amazing, actually. There were 2 examples of people killed by American and Russian bioweapons since then, but they were both own goals. The Russians secretly were doing some anthrax in Sverdlovsk, and it leaked out and killed a bunch of Russians. Maybe 10, maybe 30, something like that. But it didn't kill any Americans. And then some Americans were killed by anthrax when there was this guy who started mailing anthrax letters to a bunch of famous people. That was American-made anthrax that he had somehow gotten hold of. I'd say, all in all, it's a pretty good scorecard, right? 50 years. The superpowers only managed to hurt themselves a little bit. There were no billions who died from this. Why was that? Why was it that they didn't use it on a massive scale?
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.